Pardon an interruption, this is Troy Hill with the Star Chronicles. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So if you're interested in making your own podcast, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
This is Brian.
This is Casper.
Yo, this is ED.
This is Darius Lewis.
This is Troy Hill, and you're listening to the Knights at the Sound Table.
Strip club voice. And
I'm letting them know that they're listening to the night.
No,
Knights at the Sound Table.
We sitting at the table, son.
Yeah. I might also add in that Brian's the only person got a Tinder profile pic and stuff on his thing here.
How's we gonna get through a podcast, man? Cause we be dying
Yeah, was that Ric Flair in the background?
We going in the realms that I'm not familiar with. You 50 years old with some skinny jeans and shit.
I'm not physically designed to wear skinny jeans.
Yeah.
I would need to have like skinny jeans, like a kangaroo pouch down there. Because I couldn't wear them any other kind of way.
who you think I am?
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is the Knights at the Sound Table, a very, very important podcast this evening. I got my co-host Darius. Also have Lisa from A New Lease on Life joining us this evening. And Lisa has a very special guest. So why don't you go ahead and introduce?
Yay, thanks, Troy. I'm super excited. Kind of with the way everything is going on in the world right now with, the pandemic, and we wanted to get a medical professional on just for her opinion. And one of my dear friends, Miss Kim, I was doing the math a while ago, and it's been almost 30 years that I've known Kim. So that freaked me out a little bit. I was like, it's been about 15, maybe 20. And I was like, wait, that was the fall of 1991. Then I was like, oh my God, that is almost 30. But anyway, so Kim works in an emergency room, and she's on the front lines. And so first of all, Kim, thank you for joining. And the first question I have is, how are you and your colleagues, how are you guys holding up?
We're holding up well. It's pretty stressful now just because all of it's just beginning. So getting into that routine of constantly, living in a heightened world of infection control has definitely it's kind of taking its toll already, and it's putting pressure on us. In many situations where before a patient is having difficulties, you just jump in there and all you've got to do is grab a pair of gloves. Well, now you have to put on goggles and a mask and a gown and gloves, because most of the time, most patients actually, now that the COVID virus is out into the community, most patients are going to show some type of symptom. And so we have to take all of those symptoms very seriously. So it's definitely put some stress on us.
Yeah. So
yes.
So you're having to treat, because I know some of the symptoms kind of overlap between the COVID virus and then, even like the common cold and like just regular flu. So until you know for sure, you're having to basically treat all three of those. Because I'm sure people like me, if I get, because I am in one of the high risk, and so I'm super, hypersensitive about any kind of, fever or scratchy throat or whatever. So are y'all are having to treat all three of them basically the same until you know for sure?
Well, and it's not even just those infectious disease processes that we have to worry about crossing over, because not every patient that that is testing positive for COVID-19 is having fever. Not all of them are having a cough. Some of them might have one symptom or another. So even you, Lisa, as an asthmatic, if you were to come into the emergency room with just shortness of breath, you would be a rule out for COVID-19. So, and so even like patients with congestive heart failure, they often have shortness of breath. People with sickle cell anemia often have shortness of breath. Chest pain is technically going to be a rule out until you make sure that, you're going to have your cardiac aspect, but then you're also your respiratory and infectious aspect. And you have to kind of blend all of those things together. So there are very, very few patients right now that we aren't assuming have been exposed or are infected to the coronavirus.
Wow.
Wow. Again, we'd like to welcome you to the show, Kim. We certainly appreciate you being on here, and we really appreciate your service and the things that you're doing to try and help out the community. I mean, I can't express it in words how proud I am of people of you and like you and your service. But my question is, how severe are the symptoms that people are having currently that are coming in?
In all honesty, it varies. We have people that come in. We've had people come in that don't even show any symptoms at all and come in for something, completely unrelated. Like, I don't know, like for a kidney stone possibly, or something of that nature. And then they'll do, radiology imaging to look for, kidney stones, and they'll see there's a pattern of disease, or not disease, but infection in the lungs that shows up on a CAT scan, and they're referring to it as a ground glass appearance. That's what radiologists call it, because it kind of looks like ground glass in the lungs. And they might notice it in the base of the lungs when they're doing a CT looking for kidney stones, and that patient has will test positive for COVID, but not have any of the classic symptoms that they're reporting. So it's kind of crazy how that's happening. So you might have zero symptoms, but then of course you might have severe symptoms. The shortness of breath is the worst part, because then the patient will end up probably needing to be placed on a ventilator. So the range of severity is completely multifaceted. It's crazy.
Wow.
Wow. Hi, Kim. Once again, like everybody said already, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. We really appreciate you and what you're doing for everybody. I guess my question to you is, what are people in your profession doing to protect
Well, I'm
themselves
sure, one of the hot
at this point?
topics in the news and on social media is the fact that there is not just a national shortage, but a global shortage of PPE, or personal protective equipment. And so I can tell you that in my facility, we're not really feeling that yet. But of course, we are, I think, 12 days in right at this point. I think that Dallas County's first report was March 10th. So I think that we're, as far as Dallas County goes, just a few, not even 2 weeks in. And we're not having any of those issues. We are trying to conserve our PPE, but we haven't had any shortage. But basically, when you're at work, most people are wearing masks all of the time. We're being issued, I don't know if you've heard about the N95 mask.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that is, it's woven more tightly. And so it protects you against even smaller particles than just a regular surgical mask. But we're issued one of those every shift. Every staff member is issued one of those for the whole shift. And then we wear a surgical mask over the top of that. We also have goggles just in case a patient were to cough, so that their saliva or lung secretions don't enter our body through our eyes. And then Most of us are covering our hair also, just to keep the particles off of our hair. And then when we are actually going into patient rooms, of course, we, depending on the patient's severity, we have different approaches. If they are being intubated or if they're on a ventilator, then we have like a personal filtration device, and it almost looks like a spacesuit that you put on, and it has filtered air inside of it that through a pump kind of, and so you're not getting any of the air from outside of the suit. It's all just being filtered and regenerated kind of. I mean, you're getting air from the outside, but it's all filtered through these amazing filters to keep you protected. But then you also have to wear a gown and gloves on top of that, face shields if you're doing any procedures. So it's, if you're taking care of one of the critically ill patients, I know that during the Ebola epidemic, there were a lot of pictures of people wearing all of that protective gear. It looks like a hazmat suit, and that's technically exactly what it is. But then after work, most of us are coming home, stripping down in our garages, putting our scrubs directly into the washing machine, spraying Lysol on our shoes, and heading straight to the shower so that we can make sure to try to protect our families from
exactly.
this. So
Kim,
Wow.
okay, so we've seen like California has gone to like the mandatory, nobody even leave the house now, and I feel like a lot of people feel like Texas and Florida will probably be next. New York did it too. From your standpoint, do you feel like will it help, like they say, flatten the curve? Is that something, just people isolating like this, is that going to be something that will potentially keep it from being as bad as other countries have had it?
Absolutely it will. If you look at the patterns of infection from China and Italy and now even Spain, you can see that after they did the shelter in place process, it really has decreased the number of cases that are coming in every day. To me, I think the saddest thing is that you have such a large group of people that just really still don't necessarily believe that we should be taking all of these precautions. And I think that I read an interesting article last night. It was an editorial from the Washington Post, and it was written by a doctor who, a month ago, I was kind of one of those people like, oh, we're going to be fine. Just wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Everybody's going to be fine, that type of thing. But it's because it was so far away. I mean, I guess you can equate it like, I'm not in the military. I highly respect anybody that is in the military and is willing to sacrifice their own life and everything about their lives to serve our country. But you can think about war and you can think about what that must feel like, but you don't really understand it until you're kind of in it. And I think even, 13 days ago, I didn't understand how quickly this was going to spread. It's literally spreading like wildfire. I think in the United States, my husband, he's also in the medical field, and he gives me daily updates about how many new cases each day, and it's basically doubling. And so I haven't looked at the stats today, but I think that in Dallas County, I think today or yesterday we had 70 something cases, but I would project that because people are still out and about and doing things and not taking this seriously, I think that you're going to see it probably double within the next couple days. I had to go to the store today because I mean, I have to go to the store. And even in the shelter in place, lockdown states like California, you can still go to the store. You can go to work. You can go get gas. I think you can go out and jog, is what they said, or walk. But if other than that, you can't leave your house. But I was expecting to see basically no one at the grocery store when I went, and the parking lot was completely full.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's crazy because there's such a disconnect. I mean, everybody's buying up every sheet of toilet paper, but then they're still out doing what they want to do. And so I don't understand that part. I'm sorry to digress and kind of go off on a
No,
tangent,
no.
No, that's great. No, that's
but
great. No, it's
definitely,
great.
I think that if
No,
people
no, no,
would
no. That's
just stay at home, and even with my kids, I'm not even letting my kids like love up on me when I get home from work, or even on my off days, because I'm a high risk individual because I've been exposed to it daily, for however long now. And
Hmm.
I realize that there's a great chance that I'm already infected, and I don't want to get anybody sick.
Right.
And so,
No,
I've said from the very beginning that I'm going to do everything that the CDC tells me to do, not only as a nurse, but also as a citizen, because I don't think that I would ever be able to live with myself if I infected someone and they died, or if I infected someone and then they infected their parent and then their parent died, or their baby died, or even their child died. I know that the statistics show that children do really well with this, but not all of them have done really well. And even in Dallas County right now, there are 2 patients that one is in their 20s and one is in their 30s, and they're both in the intensive care unit because they're not doing well, and neither of them had any underlying health concerns. And they're reporting that asthma in itself is an underlying health concern. So I don't even think that they have a history of asthma if that's what they're saying. So I think it's just kind of luck of the draw whether you're going to do well with it or not.
And I think if nobody takes,
yeah.
the message that you just said, I think that's exactly what this discussion is for. Whether you believe that it's real or not, think about that, what she just said. How would you feel if you didn't take it seriously and you infected someone else? You were exposed to it because you were careless. Obviously, she is a very different situation, and she's conscious about it with her own children, and how hard that must be for her. But then put yourself as just a regular person out here deciding that you're just going to live your life as normal. And if you infected me and I, in turn, I'm the one buying groceries for my mother, so she doesn't have to get out. So then if you don't get anything else from this discussion, take that part of it. Be a responsible
Absolutely.
human.
Yeah. I agree. It's a domino effect that could potentially end up happening. Right now, we're currently at a little slightly over 24,000 people across the country has been confirmed for confirmed cases. So, I mean, to just give you a little insight on that, this is a number that I was looking at earlier in the week. It was slightly under 4,000. So this is like increasing by like 5,000, basically every single day as we speak. My next question is, should we be testing people that aren't showing symptoms, that have been around people with them?
I feel like that is like a little bit of a double-edged sword, or maybe even a little bit of a loaded question, because I have this great passion for epidemiology. I think it's the most fascinating thing ever. And so for tracking purposes, I think it would be great if we could all be tested. Absolutely. I think it would be great if I could get tested, every 5 days because I'm being exposed to it. But the reality is that we just don't have enough testing kits. And so there's no possible way. People will come to the ER and they just want to get tested because, well, it's kind of funny. This one person had contact. They called to see if they could get tested because they had spoken to their boss who was in a foreign country on the phone. So,
Wow.
I mean, that level of paranoia is almost unmatched in this. But
Yeah.
anyway, but yeah, I mean, I think it would be great for tracking purposes. But their science isn't perfect, and even if you are tested, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are negative. I mean, if you're negative, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're negative. There's, I think the accuracy is about 80%. So, in these patients that we really highly suspect that they've got it, they test negative, but they're sick and they have to come into the hospital, then what we're doing is, we'll retest them, or we just go ahead and continue just assuming that they had it, even though their test came back negative. And it's just kind of a scary thing. I know that they've opened up. I don't know for a fact that they've opened them up, but I know that the plan in Dallas was that they were going to have a couple of different drive-through test centers opening today. But that's not just for the general public. They are. I think that they were only testing people that were over 65. That they first responders, healthcare workers, the train, the DART train, which is our commuter train. If you're a DART train operator, they will test you, but only if you have a temp over 99.6. So it's not even just for everyone. It's just for specific small groups to help out with that. So
I mean, is it possible that because this has been going on for cause the industry I work in and stuff, I mean, I was completely aware of this particular virus because I deal with a lot of stuff that deals with China as far as products and stuff. Is it possible that within this 2 months span that people might have been infected and just didn't even know about it? And now this is kind of like the starting the explosion of it, going on now at this particular point.
I've heard a lot of stuff on social media regarding that. And I think that the medical community, from everything that I have looked at, they're saying that the chances are probably not, because it would have spread more rapidly. We would have seen seen more critical patients earlier, and that would have been what would have cued us into it. And I think that we as a nation have been doing a really good job of monitoring people coming in and asking them their screening questions, etc. So I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that we're pretty accurate with our timeline as far as the CDC is concerned.
Okay. And let's go ahead and kick it over to Darius.
Hey, Kim. Would you say a 14-day quarantine
I think it depends on what you're doing
enough?
during your 14-day quarantine. If you're really taking it seriously, if you go in and you present or you've been exposed and you're quarantining yourself for 14 days, and I mean quarantining, you're not going out to the store, you're not going to get gas, you're not being exposed to any other human that's coming into your home, then yes, it's definitely long enough. But if you are quarantined, but yet your husband or your wife or your roommate or your sister or your child is going out and they're engaging in social events and then coming home and being with you while you're quarantined, then technically no, because you could, you're just extending that 14-day period. But the incubation time, which is from the time that you actually catch it to the time you start showing symptoms, is anywhere from 1 to 14 days, just kind of depending on the patient. And so, yes, 14 days you should be showing symptoms if you have it. Most people, the majority of cases, start showing symptoms within 5 days, even if they're very mild symptoms. You just have to be the kind of person that's paying attention to your body. Does that make sense to you? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So yeah.
That is,
Oh,
this
yeah,
is blowing. And I'm going to
definitely.
be real honest. I was one of the ones maybe even as late as yesterday. It was kind of like, is this really what this is coming to? And I'm going to be real honest that it was not until this discussion with you today that I was like, yeah, maybe it is what and my contact is pretty limited anyway. And, I've made sure that I'm like going directly to the places I have to go and then back exactly where I need to be. And I'm sanitizing and hand washing or whatever. But I'll be honest, like it is kind of like the military and it's almost out of sight, out of mind. And that's why I think it's such a blessing to be able to have this discussion with you, because it is making it more real for me to say I need to even be more prudent in the things that I'm doing because,
Oh, absolutely, Lisa. I'm telling you that even on March 10th, when we started seeing it, I was coming home and sitting on my couch in my scrubs like I always do. I've never been a germ freak. There are nurses that are germ freaks and their work shoes never go in their house and they never wear their scrubs on their couch, and they're just they have a heightened awareness to infection. And I've not really been that person. I mean, for my whole career, I literally have done the same thing. I'll go to a bar. Oh, am I supposed to say that? I'll go out after.
Yeah, no, you, no, you, no, you can. We all freak at the bar. So.
I'll go out, and I'll go out in my scrubs after work. We'll have, like a debriefing over wine at a bar, and we wear our scrubs out. Very few of the people I work with are super, we're not really germ freaks, and this has changed my practice in my life. I've never used hand sanitizer outside of work. And I am now, and I am taking my clothes off. I'm not coming inside with them, and I'm washing them immediately. I don't want them in my dirty clothes hamper. I want them immediately in my washing machine, and I don't want anything else washed with them because I don't know if my water is going to get hot enough to actually kill things. I'm telling you that I have a dive trip. I'm a scuba diver, and I have a dive trip planned in at the end of May. And for the very first time in my entire life, I bought travel insurance, and I did that probably on March 6th because I was like, well, maybe I should go ahead and spend $150 on this travel insurance because I was kind of getting in tune with it. And then, when we started getting our first screening patients, and then you walk around the corner to another care team because I work in a very, very large ER, and you see that that all 10 nurses working in that area have on their space suits, their hazmat suits. The reality comes, and then as it's just more patient, and then patients that are getting intubated, and there are only 3 people in the room, which is it's a skeleton crew. I mean, you need a lot of hands in there, and to take it down to only having 6 hands in there, that's crazy. But it was like walking into literally a war zone, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is real. This is happening. That is my good friend that has a little baby at home that is gowned up and going in to take care of this patient with a deadly virus. I mean, it's mind blowing, the difference in my perspective today as opposed to what my perspective was the first week of March.
Yeah, I can relate to that because me and Lisa, we've had several discussions, and I think, and I know it's sad that, because I understood that there was something legitimate that was going on just because of the industry I work in. But at the same time, it didn't really submit and hammer home until all of a sudden, the NBA is canceling their season and Tom Hanks got it and all this other type of stuff, because it's kind of like relatable. No, it's not like hitting home for me just at that point, but still it makes you just wonder like, well, what is going on? You know what I mean? So,
and talking about the Hollywood representatives of the coronavirus, and I hate to say this because it sounds just awful, because I don't want anything horrible to happen to anybody ever.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that every single person that's famous that has gotten it is doing so well is not really speaking to the reality of this disease. You know, I think that the fact that Tom and Rita Hanks are quarantined out in Australia and they're fine and they're just having some mild symptoms, and then you have whatever player from the
Donovan
Jazz.
Mitchell.
Who's that
No,
guy?
Rudy Gobert.
Mm-hmm.
And he's, being interviewed, and he's like, no, I don't have any symptoms. And he's drinking out of a water bottle. And he's like, yeah, being quarantined isn't great, but, it is what it is. And, you see all of the faces of this virus are just basically kicked back and happy. And,
because they have a different edge and a better advantage.
But I don't even think it's that. I will say last night for the first time, he used to be the Bachelor. I think his name is Colton. He has it. He did a video last night, and his was raw and real, and he was talking about the things he's experiencing, and his is not as roses and sunshine as everybody else. And I thought that was really important, because he's saying that he was talking about his fitness routine, and he eats pretty well. And he said he can't go up a flight of stairs now. He can't go from like the first floor of his house to the second floor of his house without getting winded. So his is a little more severe. And I noticed Andy Cohen he tested positive yesterday, and he said he hasn't been feeling well for several days. So I'll be interested to see when he shares his experiences, if it's a little more severe or whatever. And I'm like you. I don't want anything bad to happen, but it seems that we're so, society as a whole is consumed with celebrities and athletes and whatever. And if
exactly,
again, I don't want anything bad to happen to anyone, but it's almost like that has to happen to get people's attention these days with whatever it is. If it's not this, it's.
Well, you're 100% right, because, Kobe dies in that accident with his daughter, and that was horrific, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But then all of a sudden the dialogue for the next few days became, life is short, and all this type of stuff. I mean, we shouldn't have to have events like this happen to celebrities for us to learn how to actually treat people, And
true.
It's kind of sad that it gets to that sometimes, but that's kind of just like the scope. And with social media, and we all have our phones. We all scroll down those pages and stuff. Maybe 4 or 5 times a day. And it's really, really sad.
It is sad.
What do you think, Darius?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think. The way of the world now, with people just focusing on things on social media compared to like what's going on in real life, it just makes it more difficult for people to really grasp what really is going on, Kim, I did have a question for you. If a person has this, can they be reinfected by it?
It's a relatively new virus. But it's still, even though, it's a severe virus and it's, killing people, they are really assuming, and it's all assumption, but just, throughout history, the way that viruses are, it's much like, kind of like influenza. So if you get the flu this season, then you're going to build antibodies against it. You might get a different strain of the flu, but let's say you get influenza A, okay? So you get influenza A in November. The chances of you being reinfected in any time soon are going to be very slim, just because your body builds antibodies while you are infected. So then if you're exposed to that virus again, your body will say, "Oh, hello, I know you. Now I'm going to kill you." That's the way that the immune system works. And so but then as time goes along, those antibodies will fade away, until the next year when the flu season hits again. And so even though you had it in 2019, you could still get it in 2020 because those antibodies are gone. It's not something that you build up a lifelong immunity to. And that's why you have to get a flu vaccine every single year, because you need to have a small dose of it so that your body will build up those antibodies to protect you against that virus. And even if you do contract the flu after you've gotten the vaccine, your infection will be the symptoms will be far less severe because your body had already built up some antibodies to that because of your vaccine. So I would say that the answer is, well, it's not impossible, but the likelihood is just not there. So be reinfected.
So are there any things other than what we've already talked about, like staying inside and just the extra, what this tells me about humanity is we're pretty nasty because it wouldn't have been being able to pass so quickly if people were a little more hygienic. But are there any other things, like are there, like the vitamin C with the, you can do some of those. Are there any other like things that we can be doing besides what hand washing and sanitizing and staying away from people to help our chances of not getting it? Or is it just...
Well, absolutely. Your body is, like any other type of machine. And the more things you do for maintenance to make your body healthy are going to protect you. So you're talking about drinking enough water. You're talking about, multivitamins, but more than vitamins, just a balanced diet, making sure that you're eating well, making sure that you're getting some activity in. You don't, even though most gyms are closed, you don't have to go, lift weights for 3 hours, but make sure that you're, remaining active and getting, your exercise in any way that you possibly can. Getting sleep. Sleep is huge for the immune system, and being on a good sleep schedule. Just all of those things that you've been told pretty much all of your life about how to be healthy. Those things would apply to this also. Take your vitamin C if you want to. Some people believe that they can take that airborne, which I think is really just a lot of vitamin C, but I don't know for sure. I'm really just guessing with that. But, anything that that you've been doing to maintain your health in general, continue doing that. And that in itself is going to help people. That's why people with underlying health conditions don't do as well, because they, their baseline is already, their threshold for illness is already lowered because of just their initial health when they got it. Their baseline is just not where it should be. Wow. And so, yeah.
Well, I can say, lots of information and lots of things to digest. But we're unfortunately we're out of time. But I would like to thank Kim for being on the show. You've sent out like a lot of real good information. I think it'll be helpful to the listeners, and so we certainly appreciate that. And I would like to, if possible, we could have you on the show here in the next couple of weeks to see if things are getting better or if things are getting worse, and we'll just we'll have questions on things on things of how we can get better from that point. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sure. One more thing I would like to add, for you guys that have any questions about the virus and what you should be doing, go to cdc.gov and look at it. The facts are there. There's a list of, cleaning products that will kill the coronavirus. There are all the statistics, the travel issues, all of that is on cdc.gov. And I that is always my go-to for any real scientific information. So I recommend it. And it's in layman terms. So it's not just for healthcare providers. That should be where you're getting your information, not from the Washington Post, not from social media and these weird, gargle with salt water memes that you're seeing. None of that's going to work. Go to CDC.
Wait! I was like gargling in the background right now. What? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But the interwebs said that. Any final words to the people this evening, Lisa?
I love you, Kim. Thank you so much for doing this. And honestly, I hope someone else gets it. But if nothing else, I got it. I get it. I'm so grateful for you taking some time, because I know you got a lot on your plate, and I'm just grateful for you. So thank you for doing this for me.
Absolutely. Anytime.